Yeah, I mean, I think it's Stefanski in this situation. He's the guy they brought in, the head coach. He's the newest thing to this equation. And he is, since he's been there, they've been a much better team. So while we all know here that a lot of people deserve credit if they get in, the fact of the matter is, Stefanski is probably playing and coaching for a Coach of the Year trophy if they get in, and he's probably going to get a ton of credit for getting the best out of Baker Mayfield. He's going to get a ton of credit for having them step up in a big moment if they win this game, even though the Steelers are benching their players. It's going to be a lot of pressure on Baker Mayfield, and if they lose, people are probably going to unfairly put it all on Baker Mayfield. But if they win, it's no way that people aren't the day after, Monday after, they're not going to be they're going to be celebrating Kevin Stefanski's addition to that team and the way that he's changed the culture and he's pushed them in the right direction. He's fixed the offense. He's based it around a running attack because that's the skills that they have, and he's simplified it for Baker Mayfield to be able to play well. And if Baker plays really well this weekend, people are still going to say it's Stefanski who put him in that situation. It's not necessarily Baker stepping up in a big moment.
See? You talk about people. We not talking about people, Dom. We are talking about the world that we live in. Me and you, right now, first take. Don't be talking about what people go say. Say Dom is going to say that Kevin Stefanski helped them win this game, not Baker Mayfield. Why? Because this is what happened. This is why like Max and Stephen A get to bring up old stuff all the time because they work together. Because the other day when you were talking, we was like, you know who Baker Mayfield is. You don't need to see who Baker Mayfield is when we were having our Lamar conversation. What I do know is Baker Mayfield, at least through commercials, lives at the stadium. Kevin Stefanski don't get to live at the stadium. Baker Mayfield's book club meets at the stadium. Kevin Stefanski's book club don't meet at the stadium. Baker Mayfield can put Baker Mayfield's face on not Baker Mayfield's body on a Hulu commercial. I ain't never seen Kevin Stefanski on like Gary Kubiak's body on a Hulu commercial. It's about Baker Mayfield. If this team makes it to the playoffs, it's because Baker Mayfield became a better football player. He's the Baker Mayfield we saw in prime time against the Baltimore Ravens. He's the Baker Mayfield we saw tear up the Tennessee Titans. It's the Baker Mayfield who, without Odell Beckham Jr., after he goes down with an ACL tear in the first quarter against the Cincinnati Bengals, has one of the greatest performances we had seen from him up until that point that made us say, okay, dang, maybe this team is better without Odell Beckham Jr. And now, what happened against the Jets last week? Inexcusable, right? So you look at it, Baker Mayfield puts the ball on the ground 3 times, but they also don't rush for more than 30 yards. Kevin Stefanski, why from Friday to Sunday can't you develop and understand that the run game needs to be a certain thing against this stacked box in order to win when you're playing with practice squad wide receivers? You drop back over 50 times. And so this is going to be about Baker Mayfield stepping up in a big moment. There's turmoil around the team. There's different COVID and injury reserve lists that people are being put on because of the protocol. So now Baker Mayfield, show us that you're that guy. And because if he doesn't, right? If this team doesn't get in, we're not going to say, well, Kevin Stefanski didn't coach well enough for this team to get in. Right. We're going to say, well, Kevin Stefanski got him to 10 games after Freddie Kitchens had them eating at the outhouse, not the penthouse. So this is going to be about Baker Mayfield, how he shows up, how he plays if this team gets into the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're right. We agree that if they lose, people are going to blame Baker Mayfield. And you and I, depending on the outcome of the game, I think you and I are smart enough to know that we can't decide who to blame today. We got to see what happens in that game. But I did watch last week's game, and part of the problem was Baker Mayfield. A big part of the problem was Baker Mayfield. I understand the running attack wasn't what they wanted to be, but that's what the Jets were expecting. The Jets weren't surprised that they were going to try to run the ball because the Jets knew all their receivers are out. They were loading the box. They have a good defensive line. You know what happens when teams load the box? Your quarterback's supposed to eat. Baker didn't eat. And I love Baker Mayfield as an actor. His commercials are phenomenal. I mean, those guys can catch. You got to eat. But anyway, his commercials are phenomenal. I'm rooting for him to succeed just so we can get some new insurance commercials from him next year because he is great at that. But you notice in those commercials, you say he live in the stadium. When he try to get in, they act like they don't even know him. So don't act like Baker Mayfield owns Cleveland already. When he tried to walk back in, they made him check all his wallet and everything. They act like they ain't know who he was because he ain't killing. If he was out there killing, you know what? They would say, oh, how you doing, Mr. Mayfield? Come right in. Go around the metal detector. They make that man go through that metal detector. You know why? Because they don't trust him. You don't trust him. I don't trust him. The security at the stadium don't trust him. That's the problem. That's why Kevin Stefanski's going to get the credit. Baker Mayfield's greatest games this season were a couple of moments, I think, the Tennessee Titans. You go back and look at that game. It is all about, it's not about reading. It's about them committing to stopping the run and him having play action, big opportunities. He hit those throws. Not all quarterbacks can hit those throws. So I give him credit for that. And then you think about the Ravens game where they lost. His biggest moments, the Ravens, all their cornerbacks were hurt. And they were out there running zone coverages that I ain't seen them run since I was on the team.
They had 40 plus, down.
I'm just saying. I'm saying what I saw happen, and they still lost the game. So I'm not saying that Baker's not good. And again, I love his commercials, so I hope he gets better so he can have his little skinny body Hulu commercials too. Those things make me laugh. I'm a Baker Mayfield thespian fan, but Baker Mayfield quarterback, there are still questions to be asked. And I know that after this game, you and I will watch the film and decide who deserves the credit or the blame. However, not us. We don't decide what the rest of the world thinks. We decide what we think. And in our text conversation, we're going to talk about whose fault it really is. But the world at large, if they lose, they're going to look back at last week and they're going to look at this week and you say, you know who was fumbling on quarterback sneaks? Not Kevin Stefanski. You know who wasn't hitting them throws when we need them? Not Kevin Stefanski. It's going to fall on Baker's head, whether it's fair or not.
So by default, Kevin Stefanski gets the credit. Guys, the Browns haven't made the playoffs in quite a while, 18 years to be exact. And just to give you some perspective on that, 18 years ago, Kevin Stefanski was in college, Baker Mayfield in grade school. Michael Jordan was still in the NBA. And also, for some pop culture reference, Britney Spears and Justin Timberlake had just broken up. So we'll see.
Insane amount of time, and he took over that program back in the days of Jim Crow. It was, I think, 1941. At 22 years old, he became the head coach of the Grambling football team. And you talk about coaches who can do multiple different jobs. Like Eddie Robinson really was that guy who was out there cutting the grass, taping ankles, coaching the offense, defense, and special teams. And somehow throughout all of that in Louisiana, he managed to put more than 200 players in the professional ranks. I think he has 4 Hall of Famers, like Pro Football Hall of Famers that he had coached. The man has been incredible. So I think that his kind of on-field accomplishments, they don't measure up to what Nick Saban has done. But if you look at the distance that he traveled, winning 9 black college national championships, if you look at the things that he had to overcome and the impact that he had on the sport, I feel like that's the only person that you could argue, and it's not necessarily because of his on-field accomplishments alone, but it's his ability to have accomplishments on field while fighting all the other things he was fighting. I'm not sure that anybody else compares to Nick Saban other than Eddie Robinson and what he did down there at Grambling State.
You know, it's so crazy, being from Louisiana and remembering my uncle taking me to the Bayou Classic. And, at the time, I put on my freshest fit for the Bayou Classic. And I was about 12, so I ain't really have a lot, but I put it all on that day. I had on 3 different layers of all my fire stuff. I had on some Jabot jeans. I had a Tommy Hilfiger. I had a bucket UNLV hat. I was ready to rock. And it was just one of those things. Yeah, I was cold now. It was just one of those things when you went to see Grambling play Southern, it wasn't just about football. It was about so much more than that. And so I'm going to get to my argument for Coach Saban, but Dom just brings up such a great point of being in the place, the impact you have on that place, and the lasting memory that you created in college football. Eddie Robinson is all of those things. Now, on the other side, I played for Nick Saban. Right? When Nick Saban got to LSU, we're sitting in the meeting. I'm coming off of a season. I had 110 tackles, 3 picks, 11 PBUs. I still remember it because I was expecting Nick Saban to walk in, point directly to me and say, "You are the man. I can't wait to coach you." Nick Saban looks up at a room full of LSU Tigers, a lot of